And Florida Hospital was set this task. And so they were thinking, okay, we're a Christian hospital. Where would we find best the model that we could use for the future? And so instead of going to the future, they went back to the past. They went back to the creation, and because they were thinking, well, God gave Adam and Eve a perfect environment, perfect relationships, a perfect diet. And so they thought, that's where we should go, because that is the basis. So they developed the program, and they came up with the acronym CREATION. And so we see there choice, rest, environment, activity, trusted God, interpersonal relationships, outlook, and nutrition. We see all those things in the Garden of Eden, which God doesn't make mistakes, right? So he certainly gave them the very best start to life on this planet. Anyway, so when Mr. Stearns came back to Florida Hospital and said, okay, what you got for us? And they started to go, it described this program, and they kind of went through each segment. And Mr. Stearns, when he got to a certain segment, got really excited. And which one do you think that would be? Now, Mr. Stearns is Jewish, obviously. With a name like Stearns, you've got to be Jewish. So which one do you think he got excited about? Well, we would have got excited about nutrition. The Bible is really very revealing about nutrition. Actually, it was rest. Because when he saw that program, he understood something that is important about rest. And then he started to wax eloquent. He said, when I was a child, we used to celebrate Friday night Sabbath. There was the bread and the juice, and then the father would pray, and the family were gathered around. Everybody was dressed up in their best clothes to see the Sabbath in on a Friday night. And in rest, we see, mental rest, physical rest, and that Sabbath rest. And he just got so excited. And he just told the story about his life as a child. And he went back to the Disney board and said, they are the people you want to build your hospital. And that is the hospital that they built. So there's a Celebration Hospital. And one of the things we notice here is that you watch this turret here. It actually has 8 sides, which correspond with creation, health, the 8 letters. And inside that turret, you can see it's an octagon. And at the top of each of these are those motifs: choice, rest, environment. So they feature all of those. So that's the lobby of the hospital. They have part of their reaching out into the community to try and promote a healthy community, because if we're healthy, then we don't really need the hospital as much. They have a big gymnasium in there, fitness center. This is the pro shop. There's a restaurant there, and they serve vegetarian, plant-based food. And so it really is amazing. That's inside the hospital. It's pretty, isn't that interesting? They have a little market out there, and they have a juice bar and everything. I must say the rooms are a little bit tacky. They could have done something better with the rooms, I think. I wouldn't mind staying there, would you? It's kind of like a hotel room. And every room has a view of nature. Because they believe, if you're looking out of a hospital window and you're looking at a brick wall, it's not very inspiring, right? But all of the rooms have some nature scenes outside. And this is a central atrium. So most of the rooms look out onto this atrium where you see a picture of Jesus healing an individual. So it kind of helps us to think of the physical, emotional, and spiritual dynamic of healing. And of course, that's what Jesus spent a lot of his time doing, right? He's probably spent more time healing people than he did anything else. And he was able to heal people of every disease, even devil possession, and even raising the dead. So pretty amazing Savior that we have in Jesus Christ. So one of the other views that people have from their window is this. And of course, patients can go out and sit here and just enjoy the sound of water, and it's It's very relaxing. So you see, the whole thing is built to have a calming influence on people, especially when they're stressed. It's nice to be able to hear water trickling, or to be able to sit in a garden, or patients can come out and have their lunch or their breakfast here. So there we see the 8 different motifs of creation health. One thing I want to do is to allay your fears before I go too much further. Creation health is not a multi-level marketing program, okay? Often we go to seminars and things and you think, well, they offer a free lunch or whatever, but you're going to get what? A really heavy sales drive at the end of it, or trying to persuade you to buy something. There's nothing to buy here unless you choose to buy the textbook, which actually is pretty heavily subsidized. It's 300 pages with a number of assessments in the back that you can take. These are professional assessments that you can take privately on your own, and you can learn a lot about yourself. So this book, I don't know, in college, Diego, what would you pay for this? Probably a couple of $100 or something. It's full color. It's really fine book. And that's the study guide if you want to use that. And we're making those available for $20. So that's heavily subsidized. They probably couldn't actually print them for that, but part of Florida Hospital's philosophy is that they have a program called Mission Development. And so part of they're not for profit, so they put a lot of their profit back into helping the community. So that's the only thing you would need to purchase if you decide to have that. There's a lot of money you're going to save with this program, because you have less days off work, less sick days, less visits to the doctor. Because if we're well, then we spend less time being sick, right? So let's just take So creation health is about living life to the fullest. You may remember that Jesus once said, I have come that you may have life, you might have it abundantly, and that you might have it eternally. So that's good. So these are the different, very brief description of the creation health segments. Choice is really the first step, making wise choices, using the frontal lobe to make those choices. And I'm thankful that God has given us an ability to make choices, right? The freedom to make choices. That's a tremendous freedom. And I'm thankful we live in a country where we can exercise that choice and enjoy it, right? So it's good. So then there's rest, taking time to relax, our environment. And that includes our home, our workplace, and maybe even our car. Dun, 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 dun. And activity. And so that really includes mental activity as well as physical activity. We're going to look at that tomorrow. And then there's a spiritual dimension to our beings, right? Someone once said that all of us have a God-shaped slot, and only God or Jesus Christ can fill that slot, although we try and jam in lots of other things, but only God fills that slot. So, there needs to be a spiritual component if we're going to be well. And then there's interpersonal relationships and outlook, our attitude towards life, and then nutrition, which is what we're going to look at tonight. So that is creation health. So I'm glad that you're here. So we're going to get our program underway. By the way, during this program, we're actually going to, we won't be able to cover all of the segments because I think you would suffer from mental indigestion. I noticed that, when I travel through Europe or travel through the Holy Land, there are just so many different things to see that after a month or so, you're thinking, oh, just another castle. I don't think I'll bother, You've seen so many things. And we can just plow so much information into this that you're saying, I don't think I can cope with anymore. So what we've done is to pick out the 4 most critical elements of this program They are the four that have the greatest impact on our health. And one is nutrition, rest, activity, and relationships. We notice that people who live to be 100 have all those things in common. If you desire to live to be 100, that is. So this is our segment for tonight is going to be nutrition. And I thought I'd have a couple of quotes. Anybody know who this guy is? He's not on Fox or CNN or anything, but anybody know who he is? Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And of course we've got what? Hippocrates. He lived a long time ago, right? So let's take another quote. Anybody know who this is? Maimonides. And so he lived a long while ago. You can tell that by the way he looked. Look at this. No disease that can be treated by diet should be treated with any other means. I had a lot of wisdom back there. I wonder what happened to all the wisdom that these people had, right?
Pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, Big Pharma has got in there and changed the way we look at things. But these are wise people. They understood the nature of man, physiologically, emotionally, and spiritually. What about this one? Anybody know who this guy is? He's actually an American. Dang, dang, dang. Yeah, one was Greek and one... Thomas Edison, right, absolutely. I thought this was really insightful of Thomas Edison. He said, the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Whoa. They were on course at the time of Thomas Edison, but somehow we've lost our way, right? And we want to get back to making ourselves healthy. And here's one a bit more humorous. Be careful about reading health books. Some fine day you'll die of a misprint. So, and then Morgan Spurlock said this: sorry, there's no magic bullet. You've got to eat healthy and live healthy to be healthy and look healthy. End of story. That's basically what it's about. So Edward Stanley makes this comment: those who think they have no time for healthy eating will sooner or later have to find time for illness. So we want to make sure that we select the very best food for our diets. So I like this picture here. Food, glorious food. Anybody remember that, Oliver? Food, glorious food. I won't give up my day job. I won't go into singing. But we're anxious to try it, right? I like that picture. So what about, let's get some basic questions. Food is really the fuel for life. It sustains life. And what do we need food for anyway? I mean, it tastes good, right? But actually we need the glucose, the fiber, the nutrients. Very important that we get that. So how does it work? Well, all parts of the body, muscles, brain, heart, and liver need energy. This energy comes from the food we eat. And basically it's glucose or ooze, which gives us the idea that it's sugar. We know it's sugar from the word ooze. And our bodies digest that food and the food we eat and mixes it with the acids in the stomach and enzymes. And so when the stomach digests food, the carbohydrate, sugars and starches in the food break down into another type of sugar called glucose. The gut or the stomach and the small intestines absorb that glucose and then release it into the bloodstream. Isn't that amazing? We don't think about any of these things, right? They just happen, don't they? They're part of the autonomic nervous system. So once in the bloodstream, glucose can be used immediately for energy or stored in our bodies. Red blood cells take that glucose and transport it around the body for brain and heart. So it's important then that what we eat, what we want is healthy, nutrient-dense foods. We make about 10,000 red blood cells a day, and they last about 3 months. So if you're not eating very healthily, or let's say we indulge, let's say we eat something that's not very good for us, so what fuel do those blood cells have? Well, it's substandard, right? And how long do we live with those substandard cells? 3 months. So it's really important for us to to choose wisely. So we want to discover what the optimum diet is, the ultimate diet, which keeps our body healthy. It does certain things which are really important for us. You know, we are, you know, some time ago when we had the bird flu, remember we were all kind of scared about the bird flu and the swine flu, and everybody's trying to get a vaccine. But some companies decided they would try and work the other side, and this happened in Bozeman, where they were working on something that would boost the immune system, because they knew that if you had a healthy immune system, you had a much better chance of resisting disease. And so they were they were certainly on the case. But you know, the best way that we can resist disease and boost the immune system is exactly what we're going to share over this weekend. So we see that a good diet helps us fight disease, resist cancer, actually fights cancer. I'm going to share some foods tonight which are actively fighting cancer in your bodies. And it reverses lifestyle diseases like type 2 diabetes, obesity, coronary artery disease, and stroke. So what we find is that 8 out of 10 leading causes of death are caused by lifestyle. And so those diseases which are most likely to kill us, those lifestyle diseases, are coronary artery disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure, just to name some. The sad thing is, there's about 400,000 people every year die in America from lifestyle diseases. And the sad thing is that is what? Preventable. It's preventable. And when I think of 400,000 people dying, I think of a child losing a parent or a grandparent or a sibling due to some of these lifestyle diseases. I think of homes which are stressed and hurt by some of these lifestyle decisions, and unfortunately we kind of set our children up for disease. We don't mean to, we just fall slaves to appetite. I could have put one of my granddaughters in here. The impact of a poor diet on longevity. It is estimated 150,000 Americans die prematurely every year from poor dietary choices. And so the sad thing is, once again, that is preventable. You know, we don't just generally die, right? There's a quality of life that is lost before you actually die. And a very good friend of mine actually is in the process of dying right now. She had type 2 diabetes, and her eyesight's been failing, and had a part of a toe amputated and another part of the foot amputated. Surgery is challenging because, you know, you tend to be a bleeder if you've got type 2 diabetes. Just makes everything very, very complicated, and she just went through a very difficult procedure to put a shunt in the liver, and then they're going to look for a liver transplant. But she's a really wonderful person, and it's just sad to see somebody dying and going through all this distress when it could have been prevented. And I must say, I pled with them a few years ago, please, we can reverse type 2 diabetes. It's the easiest lifestyle disease to reverse. So what we want in our foods are, you know, the only place we get dietary fiber is in plant-based foods, and we need the dietary fiber. So that only comes from fruits and vegetables, legumes, that's peas and beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. You see, because high fiber diets are associated, would you believe it, with decreased emotional distress. Having a good diet even affects our emotions. We can have an increased brain function. And once again, mentally, we have decreased cognitive difficulties. In other words, you know, we aren't able to think or to feel as good as we might. You know, when we're slaves to appetite and not getting the correct diet and fiber in our diets, you know, we can have brain fog. And it's difficult for us to think or appreciate, you know, what's happening to us sometimes. A decreased violent behavior, that's some of the benefits of fiber. Some other benefits: fiber satisfies appetite, right? Fills you up without giving you a lot of calories. The digestion is a little slower, which is good for us. Aids in bowel elimination. And also reduces serum cholesterol. In other words, the LDL and the HDL promotes HDL and reduces LDL, which is the harmful blood lipid profile, and also helps to flush out that cholesterol, and will reduce blood pressure, the silent killer. Other benefits of high fiber: keep the bowel and improve gastrointestinal function. You may have noticed recently there's quite an emphasis on inflammation being the cause of many diseases, certainly heart disease. And we're also seeing quite a profile, a lot of articles and stuff coming out talking about the importance of the gut and the immune system and us being healthy when we have a healthy gut. So that's all part of that, the stomach, the small intestines, etc. We have foods that prevent cancer and prevent diabetes and prevent heart disease. So those are pretty simple things, aren't they? It's not a magic bullet. We don't have to take tablets, but it's just about what we would eat every day. So God has been pretty amazing. He's given us all these things: fruits and vegetables, grains and nuts and seeds and beans and legumes, and pretty amazing. Just think of isn't that beautiful? Think of the variety of colors, tastes, textures. I certainly believe there's a creator God. Otherwise, we just have like one apple or one potato, and that's it. That's all you need. But God has created all the diversity of colors and textures. I don't see any of the exotic tropical fruits in there, but I mean, you think about all the tropical fruits as well. It's just amazing. It's just fantastic. And then you think about, what about the humble apple? Look at the humble apple. You know, we used to say, what was the old adage? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? But look at that apple, just a humble apple. You know, in fact, gala apples are probably one of the most nutritious if you get the right ones. You know, phytonutrients, antioxidants, flavonoids, fiber, just from having an apple. Well, you'd want to eat an apple a day, right? So what my wife and I do, we usually, because we eat a lot of fruit for breakfast, so we kind of split it up. So we have half a banana each, we usually have half a grapefruit each, or half an orange each, half an apple each, and then dried fruit, and then granola or whatever. And makes a really healthy breakfast that can really sustain you for hours. And then later on, my wife likes to juice, and so then we have an apple in with the juice, because carrots and celery and different things like that with an apple reduce blood pressure, and we can all do with lower blood pressure. So look at the other things that apples do. Is it any wonder that someone said an apple a day keeps the doctor away? Look at all the things it does, right? It even helps with asthma and is associated with increased lung function and weight loss. What about grapes? The humble grape, look, decreased risk of coronary heart disease. That's recently, well, it came out just a few years ago, and really is powerful with regard to brain function, anxiety, and depression. Resveratrol is the chemical that comes out of here. You don't need to drink a glass of wine. It's right here in the fruit itself, and that's the best way to have it because it's bound with fiber. So the sugar is, because it's bound with the fiber, the sugar is released slowly into the body. So God just wraps all these things so perfectly. You know, I wonder why God put shells around nuts. I don't think He wants us to eat too many at one time, right? Because you know how many nuts you can eat when they're already shelled? You can really go at it, right? And so, I mean, if you had to crack every walnut or every almond, you'd be thinking, after about 5 or 6, you'd be thinking, I'm done with this, I'm not doing this anymore. And that's just about how many you want to eat. So if you can grasp those nuts in your hand, which is about 5 or 6 walnut halves, which is an amazing nut, right, by the way, or almond halves, that's just about how many you want every day. And there's tremendous research to show that almonds and walnuts have significant health benefits, not only for the brain. You realize that a walnut looks like your brain? And some people have a brain the size of a walnut, but anyway. But actually, they are really fine for the brain. And almonds, the king of nuts, are amazing. What about the vegetable kingdom? Look at that. I mean, and when people ask me, oh, you're a vegetarian, what do you eat? I'm thinking, how long have you got? Like, they got all the different fruits, and then you've got all the different, I mean, what is that beautiful color? I mean, it's exciting, isn't it? I like it. I like to go into a grocery store that has all the things laid out nicely, have lights, and then they water it regularly, and everything looks fresh and nice. God has made all these different tastes and textures. I think it's just pretty incredible. What about grains? You think about all the different grains we've got. You've got spelt, you've got corn, you've got oats and rye, and all these different things. There's just an incredible selection. What about nuts? Look how many different types of nuts there are. So when people ask me, well, what do you eat? They must think I am severely handicapped, but there is just an amazing assortment. What about seeds? Just incredible amount of seeds. By the way, men, if you take a handful of pumpkin seeds, they are very good as a deterrent, as a fighting line for prostate cancer. Very important. So get some organic, and the organic ones aren't hardly any more expensive than the non-organic pumpkin seeds, and just take like a tablespoonful of those every day, and you'll be doing yourself a great favor. What about all the different beans? Isn't that amazing? Do you think about that? I was asking kids one time, well, give me some names of different beans, and I was hoping they'd come up with like haricot beans and navy beans and things, and some kid says baked beans. I'd say, no. But there's just so many. You think about lentils and all those different things. I mean, isn't our world rich? Isn't it amazing? And sometimes we have to, and I'm glad we have, ethnic foods that have come into our country, because it's introduced a whole dynamic of other foods, right? Like different beans, different seeds and things, I love hummus, which is ground up chickpeas. I really enjoy that. But now I go to the store and I find they make hummus out of navy beans and different other things. Pretty incredible. We have such a variety. I want to take you into some vegetables that actually fight cancer. These fight cancer. They're called cruciferous vegetables, and you may not be familiar with that name, but that doesn't matter. You're familiar with the vegetables, right? So collards, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, radish, and arugula. These all fight cancer. So can you make this a part of your diet? In fact, broccoli is the number one. If you want to fight cancer, have broccoli every day. I mean, that is incredibly powerful against cancer. And that can be just a part of our regular diet, right? In fact, those cruciferous vegetables fight prostate cancer, colon cancer, lung cancer, and skin cancer. So they are also high in vitamin C. Did you know that? There's probably more vitamin C in some of these cruciferous vegetables than there is in oranges or grapefruit. They're very high in calcium, which is really important because there's a lot of osteoporosis. And high in fiber, high in vitamin A, good for our eyesight, and minimizes the risks of cataract, strokes, and cancer. So, and they contain some very important nutrients, phytonutrients, which increases enzymes involved in detoxification. We hear a lot today about cleansing diets and detoxification. If you are on a plant-based diet, your body is already detoxifying. So a plant-based diet actually accomplishes that on its own, and I might share a bit more about that later as we have time. So research found that in non-smokers eating cruciferous vegetables, it lowered their risk of lung cancer by 30%. Wow. And in smokers, regularly eating cruciferous vegetables reduced lung cancer risk by an amazing almost 70%. It's pretty significant. I think we all want to start eating what? More cruciferous vegetables, more green veggies, right? So beans, what about beans? What can we learn from beans? Well, beans actually fight all these lifestyle diseases: stroke, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and they are high in protein, fiber, low in calories and low in fat. So these are good things. You know, we can have beans in different ways, right? We can cook them up, we can crush them, we can sprout them, right? Anybody like to sprout? I think that if there's ever a crisis in our country, which I think there's going to come, and so the grid goes down and nobody's delivering any food, I heard people say, well, if something drastic happens, we have enough food in our stores for 3 days. Well, if you live in the South and you've seen a tornado come through, it ain't no 3 days, right? There's no 3 days about it. By lunchtime, it's all gone. I mean, in the South, they say there's a snowflake coming, and all the milk and bread is gone in about half an hour. And so if you have a tornado coming through, which we're used to in the South, very, very distressing events. The stores actually, when we had I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was a huge tornado that came up, ripped through Tuscaloosa, ripped through Huntsville, where we lived. And Walmart just closed the doors, so that's it. They just closed up and disappeared for a week. And then there was one store out of Florida called Publix. And Publix are a southern store. In fact, well, Walmart is too, right? Arkansas, but they're out of Florida. Every store has a generator. And they had to, of course, throw all the frozen stuff away, because once the power was out, all the freezers lost temperature, and they had to scrap all the food. But every day a truck came in from Florida and kept our community supplied with basic food. I really appreciated that. But it outlined to me like 3 days is not reality. So I was thinking, what could you do to have fresh vegetables in a place perhaps or a time of the year when you can't get fresh vegetables? And I was thinking, sprouting is brilliant, because you can actually have a harvest every 3 days of some of the most nutritious food that's available. This is live food, sprouting. So get yourself a sprouter, get some seeds. They last a long time. Keep them in a cool place or in the fridge. You can bring them out, and as long as you wash them carefully, you don't want to get any contamination or anything. You can have some of the most nutritious food available, fresh, without any pesticides or any herbicides or anything like that. So this is I think it's a brilliant survival food. And we're certainly working to having a good variety of foods. Beans, of course, can be also made into a drink, right? So you can make your own soya milk, but you can buy it now. Just amazing variety of soya milks, all organic, which is incredible. And it can lower prostate cancer by 70%. So guys, let's drink some soya milk. Okay, look at the different grains. What do grains give us then? Look at all the things that grains do. Isn't that incredible? I mean, God is just, not only do we enjoy color, texture, taste, but he packs all the things that he has for us with these amazing nutrients, which our body can absorb. By the way, I'm not going. This is not a hobby horse of mine, but because I think the jury is still out. When you look at genetically modified food, and I know it's a little bit more expensive, in some cases quite a bit more expensive, but I was wondering, you know, our bodies are used to breaking down a certain molecular structure. And so if we put something, a food, with a molecular structure which is alien to our bodies, does our body actually, can it actually utilize it? I mean, we still get the fiber, but is the body able to extract those nutrients and pass it around the body? So I was thinking, you know, it's the old axiom, you get what you pay for. You know, you can pay for something genetically modified and pay less, or you can pay more for organic, which has a lot, the body will probably utilize better, and there are huge number of extra nutrients in organic. By the way, you need to make sure that organic doesn't always mean non-GMO. What about nuts? So I think that's pretty clever, walnuts. So the almonds are the king of nuts, by the way. They are undoubtedly, but I think that walnuts come a very close second with pecans. In England we say pecans. Pecans. That even sounds strange to me anymore, so I say pecans. They taught me that in the South, right? Thumbs up, right? So look at this. Look at nuts do. Anybody concerned about having Alzheimer's? So almonds are really good for us, and it reduces coronary artery disease, heart attacks. Just incredible. Researchers have credited almonds and walnuts with helping to fight Alzheimer's and depression, because what? We're talking about frontal lobe, and we'll look at that at some point over the weekend. Nuts are also a good source of, see, choline is really important as well for brain health. It's a brain boosting chemical. And it's a powerful anti-inflammatory agent. So that's really good, because we're seeing that it's in a connection now with, you know, inflammation and disease. It helps to fight cancer and reverse and prevent depression. And a good source of omega-3, which is another essential brain food. So if you have, we have a healthy diet, a wide range of foods, we pick up all these different important nutrients. And in fact, Purdue University, a researcher found that people feel more full, less jittery and hungry, and stressed when they eat a handful of nuts. He says before a meal. I think it might take your appetite away. Maybe that's how it loses weight, right? You have a few nuts, fills you up. Don't eat so much, right? So people who eat nuts frequently, that's 5 times a week, we eat them every day, had a 51% reduction in heart attacks and a 48% reduction in death from heart attacks compared to those who seldom ate nuts. So God has given us all these things. It's not that you have to choke down a whole bunch of pills and things. We just enjoy the taste of them. What about seeds? They're pretty amazing. Look at the flax. You know, the flax seed is really, really tiny. You know, in fact, your body doesn't break that down. It just passes it right through. It doesn't have the ability to break it down. So what you need to do, you get flax. It's very, very inexpensive, but it is, look at this. It's incredible what flax does. Now, what you do with flax, you get yourself a coffee grinder, and then it's about $10, and you put your flax seeds in there, and then you whiz it up in a few seconds, and you have fresh flax seed. We like to do it fresh every day because, you know, it can oxidize and go rancid. So we actually make fresh flaxseed, you know, granules every day. It doesn't take any time. It's really, really neat. When you think of flax, it's incredible. And whether you have, you know, the brown or the golden, it's all good, right? So often people ask me, as a having on a plant-based diet, how do you get enough protein? And I say, whoa, protein. Do you know what? Everything that grows has protein. You will never ever be short of protein. And in fact, many years ago when I first came to the States, we had a Surgeon General, very enlightened. I think his name was Coop, Dr. Coop, and it must have been in the 80s, I think. And he said, he answered the question, he said, well, how much protein do we really need? And he said, well, you should have a minimum of 56 grams. He didn't say this, but you know what? The only way you can get 56 grams if you're on a plant-based diet. You couldn't get as low as 56 grams unless you're on plant-based. But the rest of the world only gets 14 grams, and that is perfectly sufficient. I think we're over-energized with protein. And certainly milk proteins. By the way, when the body gets 20% of its protein from dairy products, it predisposes the body to cancer. So we don't want to have too much in the area. I mean, it's a source of protein, but it's not a protein which is very good for us. So have you ever noticed that no animals drink milk except cats? And I don't like cats very much, but my daughter has 3 of them. They just don't annoy me. But they're the only animals who drink milk after, right after weaning, except us, right? So we should try and eat what? Basically try and eat 5 or more vegetables and fruits a day, pick different colors so that we get different nutrients, and those plant foods are going to be amazing. So let's ask ourselves some questions. Is your diet filled with salt or sodium? Is it filled with sugar? There will be a test tomorrow at lunch, right? But this is amazing. Research continues to show that sugar is the main source of fuel for cancer. A banana split, which actually has 24 teaspoons of sugar, will totally annihilate your immune system for probably a week or so. Can you imagine not having a defense system in your body for a long period of time? That's what sugar does. And it's not difficult to actually get a quite high level of sugar, because just think of what most young people or people do. They have a can of Coke or soda, or that's about 8 teaspoons of sugar, 9 teaspoons of sugar. Wow, that's scary, isn't it? And then you have like a Snickers bar or a donut, 8 teaspoons of sugar. Wow, you're up immediately at 16 teaspoons of sugar, right? And then during the morning, you think, well, someone has another Coke, that makes it 24 teaspoons of sugar. Actually, we did a little experiment in one of the schools, and we just took the typical American diet, and I had the kids had a bowl of sugar, and I had the scales here, and they said, okay, we'll have some toast in the morning. Toast has regular bread has 3 teaspoons of sugar per slice, and so we were just doing things and took cereal, and then during the morning having a soda product or whatever. We actually came up with 1/4 pound of sugar. And it wasn't abnormal. The kids were like, whoa. And I said to them, what did you notice? And they're like deer with their eyes caught in the headlights. And after a little while they said, we never added any of that sugar. That just came with the product. High fructose corn syrup or regular sugar. We didn't get the sugar jar out and add it or whatever. Of course you do if you're drinking tea or coffee, right? But all those things, all the sugar was hidden in it. Pretty amazing. So sugar actually not only feeds cancer, but it disables the immune system. So like, whoa, that's really serious, right? You're feeding on one hand and knocking your defenses onto the ground with the other. And there's creates an inflammatory environment and an acid environment where diseases love. We all need to have an alkaline environment, not acid. And you think, oh, well, I'll stop eating oranges and grapefruit. Forget it, because actually, although they're acid, the effect in the body is that they are alkali. So this is pretty, sugar is our enemy. Okay, let's look at this. Does our diet lack fruit? Does it lack vegetables? Does it lack monounsaturated fats? And does it lack legumes and seeds? Does it contain animal products? Or filled with processed foods? Filled with saturated fats? Or filled with fried foods? It's amazing how, I'll try and show you a video, it's only like 2 minutes, of how much fat there is in an order of French fries. It's incredible. Well, if I show you that video, you won't eat any more French fries. But anyway, so we should say a word about free fats and oils. Our best sources for fat and oil is what? How it comes naturally: nuts, avocados, olives. We should try and use olive oil, but any oil, once it's used for frying, reaches 400 degrees, 300, 400 degrees, it automatically changes the molecular structure of the oil. And so you might as well be using an animal product if you heat that oil. Even if you spend a lot of money for a premium olive oil, you know, first pressed, cold pressed and all that, once you heat it to fry, you have pretty well destroyed any health-giving benefits. Now, my friend who is in hospital, dying, at least in the process of terminal illness due to type 2 diabetes, you know, I wrestled with her. You know, my wife and I just pled with them. They're good friends of ours. I enjoy photography. They enjoy photography. So we got on really well together. They were church members. And I just pled with them, please, would you please change? And she said to me, Pastor, you don't understand the Southern Pyramid. I said, the Southern Pyramid? What are you talking about? And she said, yeah, fat, grease, and lard, and sugar, and salt. And I said, you're kidding me. So I thought, well, I'll go and see if I can find the Southern Pyramid. I didn't find the one that she advocated at that time, but I did find this one, right? Caffeine, fat, alcohol, then salt, sugar, and use sparingly veg and fruit. It's the Southern Pyramid. Sorry about that. True. Actually, in the South, if you can fry it, you can eat it. Right? Doesn't really matter. Could be possum or squirrel or whatever, right? I remember I was giving Bible studies to a lady in I think it was West Virginia. I was giving this lady some Bible studies way back in the holler. And so I was talking in this Bible study about, you know, God's creatures and how the marvelous things that God has created. And I was saying, you know, I'd just love to see the squirrels jumping from branch to branch and all that. And she was looking, yeah. I was thinking, I don't think we're thinking the same thing. You know, I'm thinking, there's a bubble here, like squirrel hopping around. She's thinking, she tells me, oh yeah, she said squirrel. She said, that's just the sweetest meat. I'm thinking, what? Squirrel? It's just a furry rat. Anyway, if you can fry it, you can eat it, right? So here's another Southern Pyramid. And that's why we tend to be more obese, right? And that lady, that sweet lady, is in the process of dying. The stress on her family. You know, had prayer with her the other night, and we're just trying to call them and encourage them. She's in really good spirits, but you know what? All that stress on her husband, who'll be left without a wife and grandchildren and kids, and it's preventable. It's just really painful. It's very distressing. I mean, you don't remind them of that at this stage, but it just didn't need to happen, you know. The other thing we need to ask is, our diet, does it include a lot of alcoholic drinks or large portions? Have you seen the size of some of the portions now? Especially some of the drinks. Have you seen some of them? You can hardly carry it. You need a shopping cart to carry out the soda, right? Is your life filled with soda, right? Or caffeine? Does it lack water? You know, caffeine actually dehydrates the body. So Dr. Hans Deal, who's kind of really big in lifestyle, he says for every cup of tea, coffee or soda, you should drink a glass of water, because you're actually losing that amount of fluid through dehydration. So caffeine obviously causes us to have anxiety and some jitters, sleeplessness. By the way, if you do drink coffee, you should probably not drink it after 2 o'clock, because the effects of coffee last for about 8 hours. So if you're thinking, well, I don't drink much, I'll have one coffee a day, but it actually affects you for 8 hours, so it can affect your sleeplessness. Causes headaches. Try stop drinking coffee. You see how many people have headaches. the dehydration, calcium loss. That's a big deal, isn't it? I mean, how many ladies today have osteoporosis? It's a big deal. And then heart irregularities, which, you know, which is obvious because it's stimulating the heart, right? And here you can see some of the caffeine values. Boy, that Pepsi one is a big deal, isn't it? 57.1 milligrams. Mountain Dew's right up there. And, you know, coffee, a 12-ounce coffee is 156 to 288 milligrams. It's powerful, actually. You know, caffeine is very powerful. It's the most popular soft drug in America. People don't see it as a drug, but it is. It's a soft drug. And, you know, many years ago, before they have some of the more advanced chemicals today, if you were to have a heart attack and be out, they would inject caffeine into your vein. And the amount of caffeine they used was the equivalent to 8 cups of coffee, and that would bring you back to life from the dead. And how many people drink 8 cups of coffee a day? Quite a few, right? Everywhere you go, there are coffee machines. And so you can see some of the big hitters there. These have become pretty popular, some of these drinks, these high energy, high caffeinated drinks, energy drinks we might call them, I guess. So we should avoid alcohol, caffeine, and soda. So let's just focus on the positive. What should we maximize? We should maximize what? Fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, beans, and pure water. That's very simple, isn't it? It couldn't be much simpler than that. Our body is continually being detoxified. We're getting all the important nutrients for heart and brain. By the way, if you were concerned about a stroke, just remember that what is good for the heart is good for the brain. So when you look at diet, exercise, rest, all those things, what is good for your heart is good for the brain. So you don't have to worry about it, just make sure you focus. Now I'm going to show you a good English sausage, something which I grew up on. But we need to minimize animal protein, fat, salt, sugar, processed food, and definitely artificial sweeteners. They're like poison. We should definitely avoid those. Now the other thing which is really important is that, so there was I should write it down. He's Iranian, I think, an Iranian doctor, and he says, the title of the book is You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. And I'd have to kind of get my wife to just remind me of the guy's name. He wrote a book, very interesting. He was actually imprisoned in Iran, and people knew he was a doctor, but he didn't have any medical supplies or anything. So when people came to him, he advocated to them a very simple procedure: they drink copious amounts of water. And his observation was that it cured ulcers and all types of things. And he writes this in his book. He has the opportunity to see with no other aspects affecting the research. He just shows how powerful water is. And we probably are dehydrated. When we are thirsty, we've already passed the point of dehydration. So important to keep hydrated. Even animals like to be hydrated, right? Very sensible monkey here. So how much water should we drink a day? Depending on our size, we should drink probably 6 to 8 glasses a day. And if we're exercising or if we're in hot temperatures, or if we're taking diuretics, we need like alcohol or caffeine, we need to drink more water. So this is very important that we drink water. I'm going to show you some of the functions quickly as we look at water. Our bodies are largely made up of water, even our brain, so it's important to keep it hydrated. I remember I had a guy come to my house. He was doing some work, and one day he came, and I'm sure it happened on other occasions, he was just making mistakes all the time. And I'm having to pay for him to undo his mistakes, right? And he just wasn't getting it right. And I said, have you been drinking any water today? I kind of got friendly with him after working with him as kind of the dog's body. And he said, "No, I haven't drunk anything today." I said, "Here's a bottle of water, so drink this." And I gave him another bottle of water, and the brain fog just cleared up. He said, "That's remarkable." He said, "I actually can think clearly now." And so that lack of hydration caused a brain fog. He just couldn't think. He was making mistakes. So very, very important. Water helps us with digestion and assists in regulating body temperature. Actually, ladies, helps us to keep supple skin and works as a natural diuretic, which we want, right? You know, every drug, every pharmaceutical thing that's out there has what? Side effects, right? And in many cases, all they do is mask the symptoms. They don't deal with the problem. But God says, I can help you deal with the problem naturally. So, once again, there's that brain clearness. It's good for our joints. Cleans waste from our body. And by the way, how do you know whether you're drinking enough water? Very simple. Your urine should be clear. That's how we know. Isn't that simple? You don't need to go to the doctor and pee into a bottle or anything. When you go and you look in the bowl, you can see there your urine should be clear or almost clear. That's how we can know whether we're drinking enough water. And that's very, very important. And prevents fatigue. So, with regard to mental performance, here are some of the things that water helps with. Wow, that should make you want to say, I'm going to start drinking water, right? And we need to drink pure water, at least clean water, as far as we can get it. Okay? So some of you may have a countertop filter, or some of you may put a reverse osmosis system in there, take out the chlorine and some of the other things. We have one in our house. We have a well. But because there's a lot of farming in the area, I have the filters put in there. We'll take out nitrates. Because nitrates aren't very good for us. And so that's what I have those filters designed to work with a well. I don't need chlorine taken out of the water because I don't have chlorine. So I use specific filters for contaminated water from farming. So drinking enough water every day will reduce the risk of 3 of the 4 most common types of cancer. Do you want to drink water? Wow. Is it expensive? And colon cancer by 45% in women and 32% in men. So that's pretty significant, isn't it? And breast cancer by 79% in postmenopausal women and 33% in premenopausal women. Wow. Good stuff, right? Really good stuff. Okay, let's look at some of the risks of meat eating. And God actually has a number of diets. There's one diet He said we shouldn't take, and that's meat, which would be, or animal products which are unclean in the Bible. You can read about it in Leviticus. And it tells us there that animals that don't chew the cud or have a cloven hoof, so a cow, sheep, goats, ruminants, deer, are what the Bible terms as clean. So pig, horse, camel, all those things will be unclean. God says that's an unsuitable diet. And in Leviticus 3:16, I think it is, it says there that we should not eat fat or blood. And we notice there that when the Jewish people ate meat, the way they were slaughtered drained the blood from the meat. So that was actually kind of interesting, quite healthy. So God also gave Adam and Eve, it was a meatless diet, it was a plant-based diet, and didn't have any dairy or anything. It was kind of almost fruitarian, really. Very high amount of fruits and some vegetables. And then more vegetables were introduced after Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden. And then really meat eating sort of came into being about the time of Noah and the flood, because there wasn't any vegetation to eat. And so they lived off of some of the animals they had on the ark. And you'll notice there that all the clean animals were in by 7. So if they ate an unclean animal, that would be the end of the piggies, right? So God gave 7 clean animals because they were able to survive on some of those clean animals, and then of which there were 7, until the vegetables and all those things and fruits got underway. Kind of interesting. So what about cholesterol? Where do we find cholesterol? Well, there is no cholesterol in the plant world. None. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Our body makes cholesterol, right? As it does with other mammals, but there's no cholesterol found in fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, and beans, okay? Let's just look at the cholesterol values. So this kind of gives you an idea of how many milligrams of cholesterol turn up in certain food. I've kind of used eggs as a standard. I mean, from one egg you get 213 milligrams. That's a lot of cholesterol. But you know, if you just have the egg white, there's no cholesterol. And so all the cholesterol is in the yolk. Right? Absolutely. But it's 213. Look at that compared to all those other things there. What about these? So here we are. Pork's pretty high, isn't it? And they say, well, eat the other white meat. Man, that's pretty high, 76 milligrams. Beef sirloin's 80 milligrams. Oysters 84. So some of the fish products aren't any better for you. Sardines, which I used to love when I was a kid, 120 milligrams. And then shrimp, which you think, oh, there's no cholesterol in shrimp, right? 165. But egg still tops the list. You know, when I was in England, when I was growing up, and they still have this campaign, they have a little slogan, it's by the Milk Marketing Board. It says, go to work on an egg. In other words, have an egg for breakfast every day. I'm not surprised we have such an epidemic of heart disease in England, because the English breakfast is a fried breakfast. So
my 3-year-old grandson has 3 eggs a day for breakfast.
Yeah, well, he's setting himself up for some serious heart
Small
problems.
eyes.
Yeah. And so what we used to have fried bacon, okay, have fried tomatoes, and fried egg, and then there'd be fried sausages, and then fried bread. Anybody eaten fried bread? It's pretty good. You just put the oil in it, and the bread just soaks up that oil, and you just... Can you imagine what we were eating every day? My dad dropped dead at 64, and I'm not surprised. My dad also ate some of these things, and here are some really big hitters. Look at this. I remember my dad used to eat brain. Brain never actually kind of caught my imagination. And so my dad would have that. But look at that. So you have that with eggs and bacon and fried bread. Like, you should drop dead on the spot just about, right? Can you imagine 1,697 milligrams of cholesterol in brain, a serving of brains? Caviar, you think that would be healthy, right? 500. And beef liver. Anybody used to eat liver? I mean, I think about it now, it's disgusting, but I used to eat liver and bacon, right? That's how it all went together. So these are very high cholesterol things which are really affecting our hearts. And our brains, right? It affects our heart, it's going to affect our brain as well. And by the way, you know, when we're thinking about cholesterol, right? And then we think, oh, my heart's going to suffer. But does cholesterol plaque, does it just plug up the arteries of the heart?
Liver and onions, that's good.
What?
Liver and onions.
Liver and onions. You're back on the 2 or 3 slides there. Get your mind off of that thing. I need to talk to you afterwards. But you know, cholesterol plugs our bodies all over. It isn't specific to the heart, right? And our carotid arteries can be clogged, and then some of that plaque can break away, and then what happens?
You can't eat anything anymore.
You have a stroke, right? So, but nature gives us no cholesterol. Interesting. I think the overriding principle for myself in this is that our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And God says, would you mind just taking care of it? He has quite a strong condemnation for those who destroy this temple. Because in destroying this body, we're destroying our minds and the service that we might give to God and the length of our lives. So there's the textbook, by the way. We'll come back to that. Should say just a few words about fasting, like going without food. So fasting is quite useful. It's a good way to fight disease, and it's a good way to I'll just go through this. I won't say any more, but fasting, it can be generally said as a total abstinence from food, except for drinking only pure water. And so, you could quite safely do a weekend fast or a one-day fast. In fact, it would do us nothing but good to have a one-day fast to rest the body, okay? And just drink pure water. I mean, if we drink fruit juice, there's a lot of sugar in it, orange juice has about 8-9 teaspoons of sugar in it because it's extracted. It's a refined product, right? It's nice, but it's refined. Doesn't have the fiber with it. So we could do a fruit fast, right? If you think, I don't think I could survive one day without food. When you have the flu, you do, right? Die. You feel like you're dying, but you don't die. So you could use fruit or fruit juice. I would say water is the best. So there is some long-term fasting. I've known people who fast for 25, 40 days and be cured of some pretty drastic diseases. But you'd want to do that under supervision. I'd go to probably a lifestyle center or something where you can be supervised, have medical attention. You don't want to do it on your own. What about daily intermittent fasting? What's that? This is what we'd call a 2-meal-a-day program. My wife and I are on this program. We do it every day. We eat 2 meals a day, about 6 hours apart. We usually have breakfast about 8:30, and then we have our second meal about 2 or 2:30, maybe as late as 3 o'clock, but no later than that. And we have nothing else in between, nothing else in the evening. Except maybe water or herb teas. We're English, so we have to drink herb teas, right? So, but you know what? You're fasting. If you're only eating that period of time, we're fasting every day for about 16 to 18 hours. And what you're doing is actually, look at some of the things. Someone's come up with a name, ketogenic. I didn't even know that intermittent fasting had a name, except intermittent fasting. Some people came up with the ketogenic concept, but that includes eating meat, which I just don't think is something you want to do if you're fasting. It actually starves cancer cells. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? So if you're going to fight cancer, you can actually eat well twice a day, and then your body will rest, and you're not giving those cancer cells any fuel to work with, right? So this is a brilliant way to fight cancer. Our hormones are regulated as well, improves brain function, and gives us a lean body tissue, in other words, muscle to body fat. Gives the digestive system a rest. That's what we need. The body needs to rest. Flushes out of the system and detoxifies, and is shown to improve health in almost every aspect. So the 2-meal plan is just brilliant. My wife and I enjoy it, and we don't feel hungry in the evening. We eat healthily for those 2 meals, and we eat complex carbohydrates. And if you ever feel a little hungry, then drink a couple of glasses of water, and you feel satisfied. The water just swells the stomach. So let's just review as we're wrapping up. And also we could say, let's get started. So if we ever feel peckish, let's not eat a Snickers bar, right? Good as they are, taste as they are. I saw one experiment one time. The guy had a big carrot, and the other person had a Snickers bar. And they, Snickers bar has probably like 350 calories or something like that. And so they had the 2 treadmills, and the guy who ate the big carrot, he was on there for 4 minutes, and he then consumed all the calories that carrot gave. And the other person had a Snickers bar, and he got on the treadmill, and he was still running an hour and 10 minutes later. So, we only burn, if we're exercising, smart walking, quick walking, we're only going to consume probably 135 calories a mile. So, you're going to have to just think about that. Have one of those Snickers bars and you think, I can eat that if I walk 3 miles. And you'll be a neutral position. A handful of almonds. So, if we do need to get a snack, let's pick a healthy snack. Because lifestyle changes don't always come that easy. But let's actually try some healthier things, right? Instead of a bag of chips or a big soda or something, let's drink water. Let's start with a healthy breakfast, which means we probably won't be hungry during the morning. And if we are, let's just pick up something which would be really healthy. God actually is the inventor of fast food. I mean, what's faster than a banana, right? Or an apple? So we could have some carrots in our car, or an apple, or a banana, or some dried fruit. And while we make the transition to getting kind of control on our diet and our weight or whatever, we can try some of these simple things that are really, really helpful. So in the last couple of slides, I just want to show that I'm thankful that the US dietary guideline is pretty positive. And if we followed the US dietary guideline, we would have a lot less diabetes, a lot less disease, a lot less obesity. And so that is pretty sensible. I mean, it's very, eat a variety of foods, balance the food you eat with physical activity, maintain or improve that's good, isn't it? I mean, it's pretty sound, I think. Choose a diet low in total fat, saturated fat and cholesterol. Amen, I'll go for that. Choose a diet with plenty of vegetables, fruits, and that's our government putting this out. I think, wow, that's good. I think it's very, very good. Choose a diet moderate in sugars. I would say no sugars if possible. A diet moderate in salt and sodium. If you drink alcoholic beverages, do so in moderation, or better, none at all. I mean, wow, someone's given us some good ideas. So, don't take risks with your health. What do you think that guy is going to do? Is he going to flip that thing up and choke it down, or what? But sometimes we live life on the edge, thinking that it will never happen to me. 50% of the people who have heart attacks die on the first knock. They don't get to have a stent. They don't get to have a bypass. They die on the first hit. And high blood pressure doesn't give you any signals at all. It's called the silent killer. So you don't get any little understandings that something's up unless your blood pressure is running about 250 or 260, which you're just about to have a stroke. So let's not take risks. God has given us an abundance of fantastic, tasty, delicious foods that we can enjoy. And so that concludes our first presentation on nutrition. I'll take some questions if anybody's got any. I'll do my best to answer them. So, anybody have any questions? Yes?